Hello, I'm Barb Shones and I'm one of the instructors for Issues in Education. As I read your comments about your assessing your writing skills and field some questions about the upcoming Issues in Education or the review and analysis reports, I think that it's time to talk a little bit more about what it is that you're expected to do in those review and analysis reports, and also to give you a mental model for thinking about those issues. We are considering a change in text in the future, and one of the texts that we've looked at is entitled Critical Issues in Education, and it's by Nelson, Polanski, and McCarthy. And in it, they give an excellent example of dialectic reasoning. Now, dialectic reasoning is a form of critical thinking. One of the problems that I have seen in past courses is that because the textbook is presented as a pro-con with different issues, students fall into the thinking that they will write their papers in a pro-con, and that the only thing that they'll be doing is looking at the two sides, if you will, and then supporting one or the other. But that's not the intention of the course. And so I think that by going through this dialectic thinking model, it'll really help you as you look at the issues and as you read them. When you look at two different viewpoints in the text, you begin to establish a dialogue in your head about them. You're going to be thinking about trying to understand what the writer is saying. You're going to be looking at the evidence provided. You're going to assess the quality of the sources that the writer provides. And then think about the persuasiveness of the argument. If you think about the Mackay text and what that tells you, you're going to be looking at the evidence, you're going to be looking at the claim that the author makes, and then you're going to examine the warrants. Does his claim match with the evidence that they've provided? And you're doing this in order to understand the issue, not to argue for one or the other. I want you to think about an issue that you're having in your school that you're really grappling with. Now, you could make two choices. You could decide to merely look at that issue, describe it, and then quit. But my question would be, so what that you did that? Does that really solve an issue? No. Your desire is to figure out how to solve the issue. So I propose to you that by using dialectic reasoning, you can look at the issues provided, perform your analysis, but then the goal is to come up with, to arrive at a new thesis, which will be better than either the pro or the con. So when you engage in dialectic reasoning, the purpose is to develop a creative and superior idea that's beyond the two ideas presented. It's critical thinking. They're interactive because you're interacting with what the author has said, and optimistic because when you engage in this kind of thinking, you are assuming that, you know what, things can be improved. We can figure this out. So dialectic reasoning uses arguments or disputes, so that would be your pro and con, and divergent opinions to arrive at a better idea. Now, the authors of the text provided a diagram, and I'd like to see if I can switch to that. Yeah. So now remember, I created this diagram, recreated it, and I'm not saying that it's pretty because it's not, but it should give you an idea of the kind of reasoning we're talking about. So think about it this way. You start reading the issues and you're going to see a thesis, say that's the pro. And you're going to see then an antithesis. Now, in dialectic reasoning, what you're going to do is start with the thesis and identify the main points that the author presents. And then what important evidence does that author present? And the important piece here is that you're going to drill down farther and farther into this thesis to see what the bedrock root cause issues are. What are the main bottom line issues and bottom line beliefs for the thesis? Then you're going to go look at the antithesis side, and you're going to do the same kind of thinking. You're going to identify the main points the author presents. You're going to look at the evidence that was presented. How logical are the arguments that are presented? And continue to drill down till you get to that most irreducible point. At this level, then, a synthesis becomes much more sophisticated and meaningful than just this is what the pro side says, this is what the con side said. That's not where we want to end up. The purpose for this then is not to defeat one side and support another. It's not even a compromise between the two, but rather it's a search for an improved idea. When you engage in this kind of analysis, then don't think of the thesis and antithesis as being mutually exclusive. If you continue to drill down, you're going to find some points of commonality between the two. That's a really good starting place for you to start thinking about how could you take those 2 points of commonality, or those points, there might be more than 2, and use those to create a new idea. And that's the kind of thinking that you're going to look at. So when you engage in this kind of thinking, you're not looking for one right answer. What you're looking at is to uncover a new set of ideas. So when you engage in this kind of a thinking and you're going to do that analysis, that process then is the synthesis. During this whole process, you are synthesizing both points, looking at both sides, if you will, and then as you read the additional sources, you're going to do the same kind of thought process, and you'll see then how they have points of commonality, where they are different. Then as you think about your own school, your own issues, and under this particular theme, the first theme is the what we teach, you're going to be thinking about, okay, where does my issue in my school fit here? How can I use what I have learned to create a better idea that will help resolve or solve the issues that we're dealing with in my school? So as you apply what you've learned from the thesis, from the antithesis, the pro and the con, and you go through the synthesis, how are they different? What are their commonalities? Is their evidence rational? Is it logical? That's the synthesis part. The synthesis then, as you can see, leads to your new thesis. So when you think about what Mackay tells you to do about collecting the evidence, looking at the evidence, looking at the claim that the author is making, and then look at the warrants. Does the evidence match the claim? That's the kind of thinking you'll engage in here, but then you're going to use that information to go further and formulate your own thesis. Only by doing that can you arrive at an idea that's better than where you started. It's better than either the thesis or the antithesis, and it's applicable to the issue that you're facing in your school at that time. So work through the lens of not there's a winner and a loser, but that you want to analyze and synthesize these two theories for the purpose of coming up with a more sophisticated and a better idea. I think that if you look at the issues in this way, and you use that annotated bibliography note-taking template, as you read and record your notes, you're going to start finding more commonalities, and you'll see how the topics come to the top or fall out, if you will. And that will help you as you write that very first big section of the review and analysis page or paper. So look at the goal of the assignment, those papers, as being to analyze and synthesize the thesis and the antithesis for the purpose of establishing a better idea, an idea or a thesis that will then inform your own topic. Now, your idea will become the next thesis. And so, of course, you know that there's going to be someone, maybe one of your colleagues, who will say yes, but, and they'll have an antithesis. That's fine, because then you'll engage in the same kind of conversation to come up with a new improved idea. If we don't engage in this kind of a thinking, then all we're doing is admiring the problem and declaring, yeah, I agree with that, or I disagree with that. But it doesn't get us any further towards solving the issue. I hope that by thinking of the issue in this way, with the dialectic reasoning, keeping that mental model, that crude little diagram that I included about how to think about the issues, will really be helpful for you as you engage in reading all of these sources from the Kuntz text as well as the additional sources. So for this point in time, I hope that this will get you started in the right direction, and we'll see how this goes on the first review and analysis paper. I wish you the best of luck.